Alex Noyer, welcome to FrightFest with one of my favourite films, Sound of Violence. But it's got quite a convoluted way that it all happens. So can you just take me back right from the very beginning?
I, First of all, thanks for having me. This is a homecoming for me as my career started here in the UK. London is a second home for me, so yeah, thanks for having me. I'm very excited. In person as well. I mean, it's counting our blessings. But yes, Sound of Violence is a very weird example of how my career evolved from documentary to the horror narrative space. At the peak of my documentary producing career, I produced a documentary called 808 about the TR-808 drum machine. That film took over 5 years of my life, very exciting years as we interviewed the Beastie Boys, Pharrell Williams, and many more. Got me completely drum machine obsessed, but also it got me exhausted. And my wife looked at me and when I said that I needed to change, she said, "Why don't you get into horror movies? They are your lifelong passion after all. That's all you watch, that's all you talk about, so you need to do that." And I got very excited and I started to write and develop projects, and I was in the midst of a different feature when I got a light bulb. I was reminiscing about 808 and drum machine, and I got a light bulb to kill somebody with a drum machine. And that little light bulb created the short film Conductor. And Conductor in 2018 told the world to shock and awe and introduce the world to Alexis. And the character of Alexis brought a lot of questions. And as mentioned, I was developing a different feature. So the point of that short was really to be it. First of all, to prove to myself that I could direct. That was important. And then also to just maybe have some sort of closure on my drum machine obsession and process. So we toured, we got a lot of attention, got a lot of amazing feedback and a few awards. And
Did we show the short?
no, you turned
Big
it
mistake, big mistake.
down. You turned it down.
Shock horror, sorry about that. But hey, we've
I'm
come
here,
through.
I'm here with the world is going to meet Alexis, or the UK is going to meet Alexis today, and it's ridiculously exciting. And so yeah, the short brought about all those questions about Alexis, and it motivated me to write her backstory, the opening scene of the film, which I thought might be a second short, until I realized that, wait a minute, I have ideas, instruments, death, shifting the paradigms of music and murder again, not just drum machine. Let's do something more. And it became a character thriller. Well, the short is more of a brutal shock piece. It's 6 minutes, and it's supposed to, it's a bait and switch, if you will. But this is a character study. We stay with her, and yeah.
And what's interesting about it for me is because, I mean, we're showing 3 films. I mean, one's actually going to be on the online version, but with featuring people with disabilities. And I think that's actually quite a major sea change. And I think it's great that you'd actually have the heroine being, hearing disabled. I think it's really interesting that that's what you use as part of the plot.
Absolutely. It was important to explore the motivation and the identity of Alexis as she came about in my head. And for that, I made a lot of research. We approached consultants about loss of hearing. For example, we never used the word deaf because she's not deaf. We refer to it as loss of hearing because she lost her hearing as a child. The way she signs as a child is clumsy because she obviously learned it late. All those elements came from a really rewarding process of research, exploring how hearing loss, how it affects you, and how we talk about the tympanic membrane. I can't even say it anymore, but I can write it. And we created this sort of identity that really gave us an opportunity when she regains hearing to really feel that there's something cathartic about something that was taken away from you. And we set it up as far as like her whole family life, the withdrawal, the everything she misses out on, to a return to hearing. And we then explored synesthesia, because we had we felt that we needed to show the audience not only the joy of regaining the hearing, but what the sounds create. And we always joke, can you see what she hears? And this is where synesthesia came about. It is an idea that Hanno Aokia, the producer, and myself discussed, and then I I thought that was a great way to spice up those moments of terror into the euphoria that she feels, and also isolate her from death, because she is not a killer, she's an artist. It's a creative drive. So anyway, we researched. I discovered painters and music producers who have synesthesia, and hearing it, I realized that it's not a condition or a disability, it is an ability. And just the thought of experiencing sound on an extra dimension. And then I also learned that they also are completely different for everybody. People see certain things, whether it is just one color or it is flash of lights or all sorts of things, and it can be triggered by all sorts of things. So I decided that it was appropriate to create her own synesthesia. And my first thought as to what she sees, maybe because I'm half Finnish after all, is northern lights. So the spatial northern lights that she sees, that's where that
comes from.
And then we obviously went in a sort of Technicolor,
right.
psychedelic version of it. But yeah, that's where initially in the script, I really struggled to explain what it was, and then I said northern lights, aurora borealis, and it started to explain to my team a little bit what I wanted to look like.
Now, I mean, this is no criticism at all, but along the lines of things like Saw, I mean, you often wonder how they actually have the time and energy to build these really complicated sort of, machines to actually achieve the goal that they're doing. I mean, did you ever think in terms of that or not? I mean, because that's what is always leveled at the Saw movies, how they possibly could do all this stuff.
You know what, there's two parts, I have a two-part answer to that. One, which is because I did read a lot of people wondering how she does it. And I'd like to bring up the fact that they're extremely human scale. They're not like Saw, they're not industrials. Jigsaw from a hospital bed is building industrial-sized buildings. Alexis rigs instruments and uses their core function to cause wonderful creativity. And I think it's interesting because I feel sometimes that Alexis gets questions more than perhaps Jigsaw, and I'm like, and it doesn't necessarily make sense. And also, I don't think the film is anything like Saw. No. I think the film is I think that I understand that when you see contraptions or you see anything, that's perhaps the only connecting point. But as far as it is not the same principle or entrapment either. And as I said, they're very human scale. The chair, without spoilers, the chair, which is in the short, it might have looked a little bit more like a sort of grander installation, right. But I've made sure in the film that it was a very, hydraulics are not complicated, and those and a drum machine pad is essentially a remote control.
And completely against all that, of course, the most wincing moment I think is the harp.
I love
because
harp.
Everybody loves that. That's the one with the razor blade strings. Everyone
Did you do like this?
Yeah, I know. That's everyone's favorite, I think. I mean,
I love
and
that
so
scene.
Simple.
I love that scene. That scene made me so happy. It was so hard to film. My producing partner Hanu was getting queasy right behind me, and I was like a madman behind my monitor. And we were in this art gallery with a lot of echo, and my voice was like echoing as like the voice of God behind the wall, like do this and more, bravo, more blood. And it was. I have even tears coming to my eyes when I think about that scene because it was so much fun. And I must really praise Tara, who plays the harpist, because it was her first role in a feature film, and her performance. I mean, we have amazing performance throughout this movie, but when we single out this scene, I have to say, Tara had a lot of fun with that scene, and that shows.
I mean, one of the reviews I said, is it a fair thing to say that it's Phantom of the Opera meets American Psycho? I actually liked that. I thought that was a good way of putting it across.
That's how I described it very early on.
Ah, okay.
So yeah, it's very fair to say it because, I have to say that this has been an incredible journey with this film, to hear the interpretations of what people saw about it, even when people got mad at it. Fine. The fact is like it's unforgettable, and I'm very proud of that. Even when I annoy people, it's still there. But the fact is like when people recognize that it's a love story, when people recognize that it is artistry. They talk about movies as you said, American Psycho, Phantom of the Opera, Phantom of the Paradise, and also, for example, there were comparisons to Peeping Tom. There's mention of all sorts of people found themselves in that journey with Alexis, seeing what they want to see, hearing that music, and making their position. And I love that because I'm putting the audience in a conflictual position. The character of Alexis, played by a dizzying performance by Jasmine Savoy Brown, who I'm so grateful to, is an incredibly likable person doing unspeakable things. And I'm reading often, it's like, you're asking us to sympathize with a psycho. Saying, I'm not asking you anything. I'm just asking you not to rule it out. And if you don't rule it out, you're going to be stuck in that conflict throughout, and I've done my job. And it's interesting. And amongst the other references, I also mention often more modern pieces like Assassination Nation. Again, because of the presence and the identity that we're going with, the build up and makeup of this film, the authenticity we pushed for, and also because of the colorful visuals. For example, Assassination Nation uses red in a sort of full-on lighting, and obviously we have a more a broader palette, but there's a lot to it. And I just feel I'm very proud to say that this is a movie onto its own. It's not derivative of any.
No, there's nothing like it out there, is there? It is. I mean, and I'm going to ask you this. I mean, you know, Alexis. Do we draw anything from that at all? Oh, what a shame! I was hoping it was going to come up with some amazing Freudian explanation.
They haven't found the bodies, so I can't say anything. No, very simply, that's actually a coincidence. The names tend to come to me in my head, and it happened to be Alexis, right, and it's that parallel. But here's the thing: my father's a painter, and I grew up surrounded by artists my whole life, and my whole career since I started my company here has been dealing with musicians, artists of all kinds. So the neurosis of creativity and the concept of being an artist and the destructive part of creativity, if you will, is something that I've basked in my whole life. So this film is absolutely charged with everything I've experienced, and also, you know, I'm very lucky to have lived all my life surrounded by very inspiring and creative and powerful women, and that's why as well it's a female-led story. And you know, also I'm the father to 2 daughters, so making a female-led story, I better get it right because they will never forgive me if I mess that up. So yeah, there's definitely some of my parts in there, like there is definitely, but it's also somebody just sent me a message on Twitter and said, just so your film, you should be very proud of your daughter, referring to Alexis. And I'm just like, yeah.
Sure. You mentioned some more about Jasmine, actually, because I mean, she is extraordinary in it. I mean, what did you have to do to coax that performance? Did you do anything? What actually did she sort of bring to it herself?
She brought a lot. When we first of all, our wonderful casting director, Amy Renee, is the one who suggested Jasmine, and I had seen her in The Leftovers. I was like, that's such a good idea. Do you think she would do it? Let's organize a meeting. And that first meeting with Jasmine was just, we always joke who was more nervous that day. I can tell you it was me by a mile. And she has a presence, she has a passion, she has an intensity about her that when she started to talk about the script, I could see Alexis. I left feeling that I had met Alexis. So the fact that she accepted to come on board was outstanding, frankly. Especially now that she's doing Scream and she has the show Yellow Jacket, I probably wouldn't be able to get her today. But also due to the identity of my character, you know, I'm writing the story of a queer black woman, and I need to write it as an open question so that somebody who lives this life authentically and knows that truth comes and meet me all the way there to give it authenticity. Otherwise, if I couldn't have that with authenticity, I think it would have been inappropriate of me to necessarily follow that. And so I'm extremely grateful. She was very proud of me for not delving into cliches. And then we together collaborated. She is an absolute joy to work with because we spend so much time on the phone or even on set when you had downtime to really fine tune Alexis and Jasmine is a sort of fusional creation, and also Jasmine has a talent to act with her eyes that is very rarely seen. If you follow the movie and just look at her eyes, you know exactly where you are. You know exactly what mood she's in. You know exactly where she is as far as the position of the character. And we, in fact, one of my favorite technique when I direct is that we do silent takes, meaning we strip out the dialogue and we play out the scene purely with the eyes.
Ah, okay.
And that gives us great editing options, but also it allows us to get rid of the dialogue that you don't need.
Oh, interesting.
And again, the talent that Jasmine has meant that those silent takes, some of them on the opening, on the warehouse opening murder, she did a full silent take, and it was chilling. I could sense not just the silence on set, which is obvious, but just like everybody feeling like it's frightening. And so the talent of Jasmine is, I could go on and go on about it, because I'm just so proud that she is our lead, and I don't think that Alexis would be everything she is necessarily without Jasmine. But I must say, it's also her chemistry with the rest of the cast, and especially her and Lily Simmons. The first time they met, it's like there was a spark. They just became friends. They just bonded, and again, that on their scenes together, that shows. And
you've even got a Jagger in there as well.
I definitely.
How did that happen?
So amongst various actors I had in mind when I wrote, he was one, because ever since I saw Vinyl, the TV show Vinyl, I had him in mind. I wanted to work with him, and I created the character of Duke, this unsuspecting antagonist to our protagonist antagonist. It's a very complicated love triangle, and I just saw that, like, this could be fun if he could do it. And he read the script, and actors tend to receive the script and skim read it to have a feel of it. And he told me that he started skim reading it, and then he was, wait, what? And he just goes back and reads it completely. And then we met, and I asked him what he thought of the script, and he said this is one of the most bonkers script he's ever read. And regarding the ending, he's very mad at me. And I said, great. And so that was we bonded, not just because we support the same football team, but it's also because he's a fantastic guy, and he embodied Duke again as himself. This is the thing. All three main characters are really embodied by actors who just essentially had to also bring their own dimensions. I mean, as I said, I mentioned Lily. I've been a big fan of Lily's for a long time, and Lily as Marie and Lily as in real life, you couldn't tell them apart, and I love that. And again, they were all very collaborative. We all fixed the natural flow of the dialogue, because English is not my first language, so I naturally there's always a little clumsiness in the script. So we fixed it together to make sure that there was a certain it felt current and flowing, and also we trimmed anything unnecessary. As you can hear, I have a tendency to waffle on.
And that's absolutely fine. I mean, but no, listen. So you must have been really thrilled when, like, film festivals, not just us, obviously, but I mean, started picking up on it, and you must have thought, wow, this is good. I've actually got something here.
It was so with the pandemic, we were obviously a bit in limbo,
right?
And we didn't know whether or not we should go for it or yet, and we decided to actually really take our time. And also the virus hit a couple of people that we were working with, so that created some delays, and so that made us kind of, okay, let's take a beat. And we were done on an initial cut, and we were pushing to be done before the summer of 2020, but frankly this extra time we got allowed us to really explore on. But then when we sent it, and on the 20th, and I was very nervous about this unknown new world that we were coming in this late phase of the pandemic, and I had no idea what it was going to be like. And on the 23rd of December, I got an email from South by Southwest, and where I also premiered 808 in 2015. So it was, you can imagine, I was like, oh my god, they want it. And as you said, it was like, oh my god, this is real. This movie is actually, and then looking forward, and when Paul reached out, I was like, okay, this is cool. This is like there's so many meaningful places to me. I mean, yes, I value festivals incredibly, and I'm humbled to be in such huge festivals. But on top of that, being, for example, between South by and FrightFest, two very meaningful places for me. Very meaningful place as far as my career. South by with 808 and London, where I built everything. My kids were born here. London is everything to me, and FrightFest is the emblem of show to show horror movies in the UK. So I am so lucky.
Well, we're thrilled to have it, and I just know the audience is going to go for it. In fact, in about an hour's time. So that's it.